Arizona's depth propelled them to yet another win. Just how talented is this team?
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the number one sports podcast network. I'm your host, Leif Thulin, your resident college basketball guru, stats nerd, point guard by game, and ball knower by trade. And I'm excited to talk Arizona hoops with you today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The college football playoff is here, and FanDuel is the best place to get into the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boost every game day. Today on the show, I'll review the UCF game, which was tricky, and discuss all that went down on Saturday, review the keys to the game that I outlined on Friday for the game with key stats that break down the role that Arizona had in winning this game a little bit unconventionally, and explain to you guys why, put simply, I think Arizona's level right now, night in, night out, is the best in the country, and it may not be what you think. So let's dive right in. I'll start with this. Arizona is great because their unrelenting depth allows them to survive off nights from All-American caliber players and still put up the same number of points, the same defensive stats as they would any other day. Arizona's depth establishes itself throughout the game. Early and often, Arizona overwhelms you with size, and they build big leads. Against Kansas State, they built a lead, and they then had a runaway, getaway gear. Against ASU, they had a bit of a lead, and it dwindled. Similar path to against UCF. But once again, Arizona's depth establishes itself in waves. The first wave is, wow, this team's huge, and we got to try to score on them. And that happens throughout the game. But the depth comes back around, and it comes back around in this. They can afford off nights from All-Americans. It can get nothing from Braden Buries for 2 games, coming in averaging 19 per game in the previous 10 games. And he had 6 in each of the 2 prior games to the UCF. And then in this one, they got nothing from Koa Peat, who came in Big 12 play, averaging 20 points and 7 rebounds. And Jaden Bradley was a non-factor in the first half too. And yet Arizona led throughout. Did they have as big a lead as maybe we anticipated? No. But how many teams can say they can have an alternating cast of excellent players end up struggling, and yet the lead is basically not relinquished through 3 games? And was there really a scare? Not really. There was some stress, but there wasn't really a scare. Arizona controlled the tempo in this game. Arizona's powerful, explosive, but also just as steady as can be. And that's the differentiator. Arizona is steadily, reproducibly scoring 85 to 95 points per game. And I understand they scored 84 in this one, but I'm talking about the season as a whole. And the points don't really matter who they come from, because they can score reproducibly with a Koa Peat not scoring for the first 32 minutes of the ball game. They can score 41 points in the first half with Jaden Bradley and Koa Peat, the 2 best players on the team, combining for 2 points and very little actual palpable impact. And then you can have Jaden Bradley go from that to an All-American in the second half. Koa Peat had a bad game, and yet they were in control against a team that I think will be a 7 or 8 seed in the tournament. And Arizona's recipe, I've been very clear. Let me be really clear once again. Arizona's recipe is, we're going to be bigger than you, and the way it's going to affect the game is we're going to shoot a lot of easy shots. There is going to be a high quantity of high-quality shots, and then on the other end, you're going to take a high quantity of low-quality shots, because we're going to run you off the three-point line, and you're going to shoot mid-range jump shots, floaters, stuff against Krivas that will not go in frequently enough. Arizona holds opponents from 2 to 43% and make 58% of theirs, and they also get 58% of their offense from 2. AKA, they score a ton in the paint, and when they do miss, they get all the rebounds. Defensively, they keep you out of the paint, make you shoot hard shots, and hard shots are hard to make frequently, especially against a very good team. And Arizona's won the rebounds once again. In this game, now we'll hyper-fixate on this game in particular, Arizona was only +1 on the glass. Arizona's point guard, who has been such a strength, Jaden Bradley, in the first half was severely outplayed by Themis Folks. Folks was great in this game. Arizona controlled the tempo in the first half, and they had a huge lead. It was 15 points. And then they also started the second half well, but then UCF got kind of the control of the tempo, played zone, some gimmicky defense, and Arizona I feel like let go of the rope, not in terms of complacency, but they just didn't play their best. And yet it never felt like they were truly at a stress for who was going to win this game. Bradley came alive in the second half, carried Arizona. The veterans as a whole carried Arizona. Awaka, Bradley, and Krivas were very good in this game. Koa Peat, Buries was good in this game too. But in the game prior was Peat and Awaka. You're going to have, out of the 8 players that play for Arizona, you're going to have 5 score in double digits every game. That's what the average. But they're also going to have guys capable of scoring anywhere from 10 to 20 and make up for an All-American Koa Peat having an off night. Usually when All-American has an off night and you're playing a quality team, it spells a loss. Arizona had Buries, Krivas, and Bradley combined for 22 points the game prior when they average around 40 and combined for 58 in this one. Like, that's what makes Arizona different. They have unrelenting depth. It keeps coming at you, and it's not that they sacrifice size. They don't have to sacrifice a style. They don't have to play faster or smaller. They play the same way, no matter who's on the court, and someone's going to fade, but it's not Arizona. UCF, I want to talk about, give them some credit too. UCF began 5 of 19 to start the second half, and Arizona opened up an 11-point lead with 8 minutes left. Like, I felt like ball game. They made it stressful. They also, in the first half, made the game very interesting despite starting 4 of 14 from the field. Like, Arizona came out and threw the first couple punches, and they didn't knock out UCF. They had great resilience, and UCF then finished 11 of 17 in the first half. It's good shot making, but how did they score? And an unhealthy diet of shots. What I mean by that is Themis Folks had to hit copious amounts of mid-ranges when Arizona was still able to shoot north of 50% because their diet of shots never changed. I thought Mo Krivas was fantastic in the first half. In the second half, he didn't play because defensively, they played drop coverage with Krivas and Folks was killing him. Awaka was able to get out and pressure the ball more, and Folks went 4 of 10 in the second half. Arizona has its fastball. It's drop coverage and bludgeon you with size, and hopefully Peat and Krivas get going. If they don't, they also have a curveball, a changeup, whatever else. And they were able to employ that in the second half and play a little different stylistically, defensively. They were able to continue to put pressure on the ball. They turned UCF over more frequently. But in a game that they only won the rebounding battle by 1, and I didn't feel like they were particularly amazing on offense. They didn't get a great outburst from 3. Arizona still scored 84 points with an All-American, a complete non-factor throughout the game, and the other All-American candidate non-factor through 1 half. That speaks to unprecedented levels of depth and chemistry. The stats of this game are interesting. We'll touch on those in a moment, but I want to get to this. Arizona has the luxury that very few teams have, in the sense that they have, in my opinion, 2 All-American caliber players in Koa Peat and Jaden Bradley. I'm not sure both will be, but I'm pretty confident one will be. They have a guy in Tobe Awaka coming off the bench who is all-conference honorable mention last year, who I believe will be all-conference this year. I think Mo Krivas will also be honorable mention, and Braden Buries should be all-conference as well. That is 5 of their best 8 players who should be all-conference in the best conference of basketball. The other part is they don't eat into each other. There's no ego to this team. And what they do consistently is they're going to out-rebound teams. They are 18 for 18 in that, in out-rebounding. They are going to shoot a higher percentage than teams because they shoot a higher quality shot and they get more shots. They don't turn the ball over an exceedingly high amount, and they pass the ball well. And Tommy Lloyd has never been outside the top 11 of offense. So they're going to score. They're going to make it hard for you to score. And if they do struggle in either of those departments, they have different guys who can step up and have proven to do so in close games. Arizona is the best team in basketball to me right now. And UCF gave a really good punch. We'll talk about that next, as well as review the keys to the game and see what actually transpired. All that and more after a word from FanDuel. The college football playoff is here, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action every single game day of the playoffs, because right now every college football playoff game FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. So here's what I love about it. You can use the profit boost on the bets you already feel good about. Ride with the favorite when you think a team controls the matchup. But if you see an underdog taking the upset, go for them as well. And then you apply the profit boost and go after even bigger winnings. And when you win, FanDuel pays out instantly, which is perfect for playoff football. FanDuel's the best place to get into the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com and get your college football playoff profit boost every game day. Welcome back to Locked On Wildcats. Leif Thulin with you here. I often talk about keys to the game, and I give a key of like, this is how Arizona wins by X amount because I think they're that good. In this case, it was just how they win. And we'll review those keys and tell you what actually happened in the statistics. So let's go through these. And for those everydayers, this may be a little bit of a revision, but bear with me here. These teams are both top 20 on the offensive glass, and UCF is not quite as elite on the defensive glass is what I wrote. And I said, this is where I think the game could be decided. If Arizona wins, they will win the glass by 7 or more, and they will win by 10 or more. That was my guess. If they were able to win by 7 or more on the glass, they'd win by 10 or more. My guess was Arizona gets around 40 boards and UCF 32. So I kind of was close in terms of the pacing of this game and how many rebounds there would be. I was wrong in terms of the margin. Arizona played its closest game yet. They were +2 against Florida. Every other one's been a rout in terms of the boards. 37 boards for Arizona, 36 for UCF. Very, very close. And Arizona was actually out-rebounded on the offensive glass. And second chance points, they were beaten by 14, 19-5. So kudos to UCF. I would say they won the glass, even though Arizona technically did. It's just because they forced more misses. Their defense was better. They forced harder shots. But that was a poor performance on the glass for Arizona. Yet another reason to have optimism because they typically will rebound better than that. Next, I talked about Arizona being very good at limiting threes. UCF shoots 39% from three, and they just surrendered an outlier performance against ASU, who hit 11 threes. UCF hits 39%, which leads to 8.5 per game, I said, and that's 29% of their total point output. So my goal was don't let them get hot from deep, and don't let them exceed the 29% of their output of total points because they're good at shooting twos, hitting 55% from two on the season. But ASU made a ton of hard twos. And like I said, it's really hard to score efficiently against Arizona from two because they make you shoot mid-range jump shots, which Masamba Diop and Mo Odom hit a lot of. So I expect the 2-point percentage to dip for UCF, and thus limiting in excess of threes being made wins the game for Arizona because that's the only way to stay with Arizona's reproducible and consistently excellent offense based on twos. So my goal was 7 or fewer threes made for UCF. They hit 8, but they went 8 of 26, which is not particularly good. And then if you were to extend that out, they then went 20 of 44 from two. And Themis Folks hit tons of mid-range jump shots to get them to a number that is still below 50% when they shoot 55%. So more or less, that would be a check mark for Arizona. The next one was paint-oriented points. For those of you who listen to me a lot, know a lot about this. It's a statistic where Arizona scores nearly 70 points, in fact, slightly over 70 points in the paint plus free throws made. And that number to me will dip in conference play. But if Arizona scores 65 plus, they're awfully hard to beat. So that's the goal right here. They scored 36 points in the paint, which is actually a very low number. Kudos again to UCF. But they scored 23 free throws. That gets you to 59 points. So it's short of the number, not quite there. And that's why this game was close. Arizona had to hit mid-range jump shots. They didn't have Koa Peat dominant in the glass and then scoring on the post. They did not get as many fast break points. They only scored 10 points off of turnovers, and second chance points, they only had 5. No wonder the number is lower, and that's why this game was closer. And the last key to me was Arizona didn't turn it over against ASU, but they also didn't force any turnovers. UCF doesn't force many turnovers, and they only turn it over on 16% of possessions, which is very, very good. So who can win the turnover battle? And let's expand here and say, this is what I said. I want Arizona to win the points off of turnovers battle by 7 and reach 15 points off of turnovers. Well, points off of turnovers, it was +6 for UCF, as well as Arizona actually forced more turnovers. That's not good. They did not score and capitalize when they did force turnovers. They didn't turn it over a ton, so good job there. And then I also said, possession battle really matters. Like that has been my whole premise this entire season about what wins in college basketball. It's a team that gets more shots, and the ways to get more shot is get offensive rebounds, which Arizona typically does very well. They did not do so very well in this one, And then secondly, a team that forces turnovers, and therefore you get uncontested baskets, points off of turnovers, as well as second chance points that are not uncontested, but they're typically easier. Well, I wanted Arizona to get 12 or more second chance points and 15 points off of turnovers, and they were well under both of those. Kudos to UCF. Like, they did very well. I don't think Arizona was terrible in these departments, but I do think you had an off night. I also think while having an off night, not only with Koa Peat, while having an off night in terms of points off of turnovers, which are high quality shots, a very low night in second chance points, Arizona still shot 53% from the field. That means they did a great job on offense, and they had to hit hard shots to do so, and their best player had a bad game, and they still scored 84 points against a good team. I expected Arizona to win by 10 because I expected many of these things to happen. In fact, Arizona won by 7, and very few of the goals I set out happened. That means that they are very hard to beat. The other part I would tell you is if you were to look at statistics for any indicators, Arizona didn't hit any threes either. They hit 3 threes, and they still scored 84 points on a day where for one half their point guard was a non-factor, and for the whole game their best player, Koa Peat, who's scoring 20 and 7 in Big 12 play, was a non-factor. That means that there is enough depth to carry those loads. Arizona had 5 players, despite what I just said being completely true, have 5 players with double digits: 23 from Bradley, 18 from Buries, 10 from Karchenkov, 17 from Krivas, and 10 from Milwaukee. They were able to sustainably score despite a poor shooting day from 3 and despite a complete no-show from Koa Peat. I want to reiterate, they also didn't get any second chance points, and they also didn't get it out in transition. So they did this against a set defense and still scored 84. It's really hard to stop Arizona. That's what makes them great. And they play so well together. When they're clicking, they're really hard to beat. But right now, they're the most consistent team in the nation by miles and miles. It's not even close. And the other part, if you want to go to stats in this one, Krivas and Buries scored 26 points for Arizona in the first half. You go to the second half, those guys that carry the torch weren't terribly important. Like, Krivas sat on the bench and Buries went 3 of 7 in the second half after a tremendous first half. It can switch within a game who's going to do what. Arizona didn't score a field goal for the final 4 minutes and still were able to win this game by 7 points and score 84 points. I really think Arizona played okay and were able to beat a good game and a great game from Themis Folks, who was able to penetrate into areas that Arizona is willing to give you shots, and he was able to make them pay. He scored 30 points, but what Arizona did is took away Riley Kugel. He had to shoot 18 times to score 12 points. Stillwell, 2 of 7. Burks, 6 of 12 to score 16, and a couple of those were kind of bunnies at the end. Johnson, 2 of 7. Essentially, UCF shot 40% by virtue of hard shots made by Themis Folks. Themis Folks had 30 points and 8 assists. No one else was able to get going. Arizona's defense still did its job despite a Herculean effort from Themis Folks. Coming up next, I'll talk about Arizona, how they compare to me to the rest of the Big 12, and the national scale of who I think will be the 1 seeds, because I think 1 seeds and 2 seeds are pretty much set at this point. Maybe I'm crazy for this one. You guys tell me next after a word from TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life this year. It doesn't ever, because TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work with you on every single deduction. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150, all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Welcome back to Locked On Wildcats. Leif Thulin with you here. Arizona should be the unanimous number 1 when the poll comes out tomorrow. Iowa State was number 2. They had just 1 vote out of 61, and they went 0-2 this week. So it would be pretty surprising if there were to be anyone else voted there. Michigan lost. They didn't look convincing in a win against Oregon. You look at some of the other games, and Duke didn't look particularly great against Cal. They did beat the brakes off of Stanford. UConn struggled in Big East play with recent wins over Seton Hall, Georgetown, and Providence that all looked unconvincing. And then you get to Purdue, who's starting to play better, but they were mollywopped by Iowa State within Mackey. Arizona is clearly the best team right now. How do I see it unfolding going forward? I think the one seeds are actually pretty clear. I would be pretty stunned. So you guys can quote me on this if you'd like. I think the one seeds will be Arizona, the winner of the Big Ten between Michigan and Purdue. I think it's likely to be Michigan, but I actually took Purdue to win the Big Ten, so I'm a little stubborn and trying to hold on to hope for Purdue. And this is recent. Like everyone took Purdue in the preseason. I recently took Purdue to win the Big Ten. I just feel like they're playing better basketball right now, and they have a better way of winning games late. They impressed me more, but I think Michigan's actually the better team between them and Purdue. Anyway, take the winner of the Big Ten. Well, let's go with Michigan for the sake of simplicity because Arizona's been compared to Michigan all season long. And then I think it'll be Duke and UConn clearly as the other two because neither are going to be challenged in their respective conferences. The ACC has more talent, but the team that is the second most talented and many took as the team to win the ACC, Louisville, bad. Virginia is solid, but they're not close to what Duke is. Clemson's solid, but they're not quite there. UConn has just to play St. John's. Marquette's horrible. Creighton's pretty bad. You look at the Big East, and no one's there. So to me, UConn may finish with one loss to the Arizona Wildcats, and they could be a contender for the number one overall seed because they have no one else to play. I think it's Arizona, Michigan, Duke, UConn in some order. And then the top two seed is the Michigan or Purdue. So we'll just say Purdue for the sake of simplicity. And then I think you get Houston, who I believe is the second best team. And I talked about this a couple of weeks ago before conference play that I thought Houston would overtake Iowa State. And by no means is Iowa State dead in the water, but I do think they fall off and fall to the 3 or the 4 line. I just think that they're too reliant on 3 players. And Arizona has tremendous depth and Iowa State is thin. And then I think you get to Gonzaga, who will win the WCC almost inevitably. St. Mary's might be able to give them a run for their money, but St. Mary's just lost. And then, so that's 7 teams. The last 2, I think, could be Florida if they start picking up. Once again, a great win for Arizona. You should be rooting for that because that strengthens Arizona's resume even further. It's either going to be Florida or Michigan State to me. So there you go. And then if it's not that, I think you get to the Florida, the Vanderbilts, the teams like that. I think it'd be if it's Michigan State, it would be Florida, Vanderbilt, Iowa State, and probably BYU as the 4th 3 seed. Like the way I see it happening is Arizona is going to be a 1 seed. I think Houston will be a 2. I think BYU and Iowa State will both be 3s. I think Texas Tech and Kansas probably both 4s. The 6 best teams in the Big 12 are 6 of the best 16 in the country. And Arizona will play all of them, of course. They also will have beaten, to me, what is the best team in the SEC and the best team in the Big East, and perhaps the second best team in the nation in UConn. Arizona has a chance. It's going to be exceedingly unlikely to go undefeated. But if they were to go undefeated, they would have a claim to be one of the best champions ever. And I'm not going to say, like, get out ahead and say they go 40-0 or whatnot. But even if they were to have some losses and then win a championship, they could have a claim to be one of the best championship winners ever. I'm ahead of my skis there, no doubt about it. But the schedule is a gauntlet, and Arizona has guided through to 18-0. Coming up next, you got Cincinnati and West Virginia to finish out the stretch that I thought would be the easiest. And I want to circle back to a thought I made after the Florida game. I thought Arizona could go 19-1, 18-2, and be the number 1 team by January. Well, they exceeded that expectation. They're 18-0 right now. They've been number 1 for a while, and they beat UConn and Alabama, the 2 teams that I thought would be difficult to beat. And where we are at right now is there are 2 more games to get to 20-0. And after 20-0, 7-0 in conference play, you really just got to play 500 ball to go 26-5, which was my preseason record prediction that many said, well, that's too good. Like 21-11 seems more likely. 21-10, according to Ken Pom. Well, Arizona can easily go 20-0 to start. And I just watched BYU against Texas Tech. That's the game everyone's circle is like the first loss is coming here. Marriott Center is not a fun place to play. It's very loud. It's very passionate. It's a fun game. I'll be there. But I've watched them in person a couple times. I watched them against Texas Tech. BYU's got some flaws. I think Arizona might win that game. I'm getting ahead of my skis once again. But Arizona's got a real path to being a serious dynamo that somehow, as the number 1 team for over a month now, is hiding in plain sight. Like, I think Arizona and just how good they are with wins over a fellow number 1 seed in UConn, what I think will be a 2 seed or a 3 seed in Florida, a win over Alabama, who I think will be a 4 seed, potential wins over Iowa State, Houston, and BYU, which obviously those have to happen, Texas Tech and Kansas as well, who are all going to be top 4 seeds. This could be one of the best teams in the last 20 years. And no one even is talking about them as the best team in the country right now. Like, there's still more focus, and the odds still favor Michigan. I think Arizona is a pretty special team. I think it's pretty crazy how underrated this team is. Like, the more I think about it, this team has 2 All-Americans in Bradley and Peat, in my opinion, 5 players that'll be all-conference honorees in the smallest way. Like, Buries may not be all-conference first or second team, but he will be an honorable mention. Krivas, I think, will be a second team. I think Awaka will be a second team. I think Karchenkov might be on the all-defensive team. Like, there's a world where 7 of the 8 players for Arizona are at least honorable mentions. And yet no one talks about this as the most stacked team, and even in the country, even in the conference. But they all fit together perfectly, and they reproducibly get great shots, shoot a high percentage of those great shots, and hold teams to 43% on what are mostly layups. And when they take you out of shooting layups, that's a win for the defense. They also get 41% of their misses and have dominated the glass so much so that they were plus 20 against the third best team in the country right now in UConn on the glass, on the road. Arizona is a dynamo, and I think they're hiding in plain sight as one of the best teams in the past 20 years. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. That's my final take for the day. Let me know what you guys think below. And I would love to hear your thoughts on the UCF game. What went right? What went wrong? And answer me this. When is the first loss, or will there be a first loss? We'll talk about that later this week, as well as preview Cincinnati and West Virginia. 2 games coming up this week, and then a squaring off with BYU coming up next Monday. Thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day to all who are listening. And once again, bear down.